Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rhiannon and today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 10 books of 2020. This is in no particular order, but I am going to show them in the order that I read them, if that makes sense. So I'm going to start off with the books that I read at the start of last year and finish it with the books that I read at the end of that year. I do just want to say to you guys, I did end up reading 108 books in 2020 and there's no way that I could talk about half of my favourites in a video because it would just take too long. So I have narrowed it down to 10 books that I really enjoyed and I feel like are my favourites of last year. The first one of those is Fury Born by Claire Legrand. I absolutely fell in love with this book when I read it. It was exactly what I needed at the time and I was just so immersed and invested in the story that I could not put it down. This is a really difficult one to explain because we do follow two different characters from two different timelines. The first person we follow is Riel, and one day when the Crown Prince is in danger, Riel reveals that she actually has some magical powers, and in her world you are only meant to be able to wield one of these magical powers, but it does appear that she can wield more than that, and so she is thought to be the Sun Queen, who is a prophesied queen that is meant to bring good fortune to everyone in this land. But she must endure 7 difficult trials to test her magic to prove that she is actually the Sun Queen, and if she fails she will be executed. 1,000 years later, the legend of Queen Riel is just a fairy tale to Eliana, who became a bounty hunter to protect her family once the Empire conquered her kingdom. But one day her mother vanishes, and to find her, Eliana joins a rebel captain on a dangerous mission where she discovers that the evil at the heart of the Empire is much worse than she could ever imagine. And it just says here, as Riel and Eliana fight in a cosmic war that spans millennia, their stories intersect, and the shocking connections between them will ultimately determine the fate of their world and of each other. I don't want to say more than that, but in this world, like I said, we have magic. It's more like elemental sort of magic, and then we also have angels, which is a really cool aspect of this. Like I said, this is one of the first books I read last year, but I'm absolutely ashamed to say that I never carried on with the rest of the books in this trilogy. So I don't know if you can see, but I have them both there. It's the red and the white one, and for some reason I never picked it back up, and the second book, Kingsbane, has been on about 2 or 3 of my TBRs and I just never get around to it because I keep putting it off, I think because I love this one so much and I don't want to be disappointed. But everyone says that the second book is even better than the first one, so I just don't know what's going on with me, to be honest with you. I might even reread this now because I feel like a lot of time has passed since I read it and a lot of key details will have been forgotten by me because I am so forgetful when it comes to little details in the plot of a book. The one thing I will say though is that there is a very gruesome scene in here which involves the death of an animal that really did throw me off. That is one of the only things in this book that I genuinely wish was not included, and I don't think particularly needed to be included, and it did make me feel very ill, so please be aware of that going in. But other than that, it is such an amazing fantasy book and one that I would highly recommend you all give a go. Next up we have Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. At the start of this year there was a read along going along for the books in the Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson, and that was hosted by a load of different booktubers but was unfortunately cancelled because of some issues with the host that I don't need to go into on here. But the first book that we read was Elantris, and this is one of my all-time favourite books. It was just amazing, and I feel like everyone raves about the Mistborn trilogy, but I enjoyed this one a lot more than I enjoyed the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, which is The Final Empire, which I did also read this year. I think because this is a standalone novel, I just got everything that I wanted in one, whereas obviously in Mistborn it's spread across 3 books and I've only read the first one, so I don't even know where that's going. This one though was such an interesting concept. I was so gripped from the start, and we do have a load of different perspectives in this, which definitely helps you along in the story. I honestly have no idea how to pronounce half the names in this book, so bear with me while I try to give you a coherent synopsis. But in this world, Elantris was a place of glory, and it was basically a home for these magic using demigods who are called the Shroud. But one day all the magic seemed to stop working and Elantris did begin to rot, and it eventually became a very horrible place. Because Elantris used to be in the capital city of this world, it was then moved to a new place called Kay, but it was still close enough to Elantris so that people were always reminded of the fate of the demigods and the fall from power that they all experience. One day a princess arrives in the new capital city of Kay in order to marry the prince, and this is to seal a political alliance between their 2 kingdoms and to basically prevent a rebellion of religious imperialists. However, days before the princess arrives at the capital, her soon-to-be husband ends up dying. She will not be stopped there though, because she is determined to find peace, and in her pursuit for peace she ends ends up classing with one of the religious priests who is determined to corrupt the capital into his way of thinking. And it does just say on the end of the synopsis, but secrets remain in Elantris. The dead and the ruined may yet have a role to play in this new world because magic still lives. I honestly don't know if that synopsis was coherent in any way, shape or form, but I hope you get the gist of it. But to be honest, I feel like it's definitely one you don't really need to know a lot about before going into it. It's definitely much more impactful if you dive in not really having any expectations, not really knowing what to expect, because it just takes you on an absolutely wild ride. But it is so interesting and the magic system is so complex, but everything just works and it all comes together to create this amazing story. So yes, another one that I would definitely recommend and has earned its place as one of my new favourite books. Next up, we have one that I feel like is going to be on a load of different people's favourite books of 2020 list, and that is Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. Do I even need to tell you guys about this book? I read this one so quickly, I could not put it down. I was so invested from the get-go. Even though this is a chunky adult fantasy, it just sucked me in straight away. I felt deeply connected to the characters, I loved the setting, and honestly, this book ended up breaking my heart. So in this one, we follow Bryce Quinlan, who is a bit of a party girl. She spends most of her nights out drinking and partying amongst the angels, humans, shifters and fae. However, one day, one of her close friends is actually murdered, and this just completely flips Bryce's world upside down. 2 years later, when the supposed killer is behind bars, a similar type of murder occurs, and the city's leaders actually command Bryce to investigate these murders. And they assign an enslaved fallen angel named Hunt Alathar to make sure that she does exactly that. But as Bryce fights to uncover the truth of these murders, whilst resisting her attraction towards Hunt, she finds herself following a trail that will lead her deep into her own dark past. I know that a lot of people thought this book was quite slow, and I agree, it does take a while to get into this, but that is the case with any new adult fantasy book. It definitely takes you quite a while to get used to the world, the characters, the setting, but as soon as you get past the 100 to 200 page mark, I feel like it reads as any other book, because by that point you are already invested, and so you just want to find out what is happening, and so you don't focus as much on the writing style. I cannot wait for the second book in this series to come out. I will definitely be rereading this book before it does come out, just so I can dive back into this world and be fully immersed in the story again before picking it up. But to be honest with you guys, I might even reread it before then, because I just want to re-experience this story because it was truly amazing. Next up, we have another beast of a book, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Again, this is another adult fantasy book, but in this one we are following two different sets of characters from two different parts of this world. And honestly, for this one, I'm just going to read you the synopsis, because if I try to explain what this 800+ page book is about, I will be here forever and I will just not make sense. So for all of our sakes, I will just read you what it says on the dust jacket. So it says, a world divided, a queendom without an heir, an ancient enemy awakens. The house of Berethnet has ruled Innis for 1,000 years. Still unwed, Queen Sabran IX must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are creeping closer to her door. Iad Durian is an outsider at court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Iad keeps a watchful eye on Sabran, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. Across the Dark Sea, Tane has trained to be a dragon rider since she was a child, but is forced to make a choice that could see her life unravel. Meanwhile, the divided East and West refuse to parley, and forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. This is another one that you definitely need to read about 200 pages before you actually become fully immersed in the story. But again, as soon as you get used to that format, you will absolutely fall in love with this book. I got so attached to this that I was getting angry, I was happy, I just felt so much love towards some of these characters that I just cannot describe to you. This is also a standalone, so there's no commitment to reading a ton of these big books. You can just dive into this, read the whole thing and then put it down. I do know that Samantha Shannon is planning on writing more books in this world, but it's not a continuation, you can read them separately, so definitely don't worry about that. But it is something, again, that I'm just so excited to have more content from, and I just can't wait to dive back into this world as soon as possible. Next up, we have a very different type of book, and that is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. I actually have a weekly reading log up where I read this book, so I will leave that up above if you want to see my thoughts as I was reading it. But guys, this was such an amazing journey. This is a paranormal murder mystery, and we are set in New Orleans in the 1800s. Our main character, Celine Rousseau, has to flee Paris one day and ends up travelling to New Orleans, where she finds that there is a dark underworld to the city that she is immediately drawn to. And in particular, particular a group named Le Corps de Lion. But when a body is found in this group's lair, Celine is forced to battle her attraction towards the group's enigmatic leader Sebastian Saint-Germain and suspicions about his guilt along with her own dark secrets. As more bodies are discovered, New Orleans becomes gripped by the terror of a serial killer on the loose, one who just so happens to have Celine in his sights. But when she finally decides to take matters into her own hands, she discovers that she is in the middle of an age-long feud between the darkest creatures of the night, where the price of forbidden love is her life. I flew through this book. It was just the perfect type of book for me. You guys know by now that I love murder mysteries, and this one was just in such a perfect dark setting that I genuinely could not put it down. What's also absolutely fascinating about this book is that we do get the perspective of the serial killer, so you see his thoughts before he kills, as he's killing, after he's killed, and it's just very messed up but in such a good way. But it is such an amazing part of the story, and it's just something that creeped me out throughout the whole thing. I will say I have read the second book, The Damned, and I didn't enjoy that one as much, but to be honest I don't think anything could have topped this one. Next up we have another one that is sure to be on a lot of people's favourites list, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Where do I even begin to tell you guys about this book? It was an emotional rollercoaster for me, guys. I absolutely loved this one. Again, I should have a reading vlog of me reading this, so I will leave it linked up above or down below. To be honest, I think that every book from now on has a reading vlog, so I will leave all of them linked down below if you want to hear my thoughts on them. But this one was just such a mixture of emotions for me. It made me happy, it made me sad, and it actually did manage to make me cry, which is when I know a book has had such an impact on me, because I never cry in books. I could put any film on and bawl my eyes out, but for some reason I find it so difficult to cry about a book. But this one brought a tear to my eye, guys. This is another one that I don't really want to tell you what it's about too much, because it's just one that you need to dive into and experience it for yourself. I know that this is definitely not a book for everyone. It is quite slow and character based, so if you don't like that, it maybe won't be your favourite, but if you stick with it, it genuinely does pay off, and it is such an amazing story, and the concept of it is just absolutely mind-blowing, but in the best way possible. So in this one we follow a girl named Addie LaRue, and she makes a desperate deal in the dark, a bargain to live forever but to be forgotten by everyone she meets. This means that she can't have any physical possessions, she can't take any photographs, she can't draw, she can't even write. She cannot leave a single mark on this world, and like it says, as soon as she walks away from people, they no longer remember who she is, and so it ends up being quite a lonely life for her. Until one day she walks into a bookshop and the boy who works there actually remembers who she is, and this ultimately kickstarts Addie's will to live once again. But of course it's not that simple. As Henry and Addie's lives start to intertwine, they must face the consequences of the decisions that they made and the price that is left to be paid. And this just sums it up beautifully. It says, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is a dazzling adventure across centuries and continents, across history and art, about a young woman learning how far she will go to leave her mark on the world. I'm not going to say much more about it because I could honestly talk about this for hours, but just know that it's definitely worth the read, even though it is a bit slower in places. The ending is just heartbreaking, but it is just such a good story that you will definitely fall in love with. The next two books are both ones that I read in December, the first one of those being Northern Lights by Philip Pullman, otherwise known as The Golden Compass. So this is the first book in the His Dark Materials trilogy, and if you saw any of my videos throughout December where I talked about this, you will know that I fell head over heels in love with it, which is weird because this is actually a reread for me. I read this about 2 years ago and gave it 4 stars. I thought it was okay, but nothing absolutely spectacular, until I read it this year. I decided it was finally time to continue on with the series, but I did want to reread the first book in order to fall back into the world, and again just to refresh myself on key points that actually happened. And guys, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, and it's a new all-time favourite book. I don't know what was wrong with me the first time I read this one. I don't know if I just wasn't in the right mindset, I don't know if I just wasn't comprehending what was happening, but I just did not appreciate this book at all. Another aspect that I wanted to talk about is the audiobook. So on Audible there is a recording of this book with a full cast, and that is just absolute perfection. So Philip Pullman actually narrates most of the books, but if a character is speaking then they do have different voice actors, which definitely helps keep you interested and engaged in the story. There are also sound effects, which is just so cool. So combining my love for the physical book and my love for the audiobook, it was just going to be an amazing reading experience, and it definitely was. I read the majority of this in one day. I could not put it down. Normally if I'm listening to an audiobook I will go for a walk and clear my head and listen to it that way, but with this one I was reading the book and listening to the audiobook and I did not move from my seat. In this one we follow a girl named Lyra Balakwa, and she and her demon Pan live among the scholars at Jordan College in Oxford. But she is no ordinary child. Her destiny will actually take her to the frozen lands of the Arctic, where witch clans reign and ice bears fight. And this extraordinary journey that awaits her will have immeasurable consequences far beyond her own world. I'm not going to say any more than that, but the setting of this book is absolutely perfect. Like I mentioned, we are in Oxford, but we do also take a trip to the north, and you guys know that I love a snowy setting, so that was just absolutely perfect to me. I have since read the second book and I loved that one too, so now I'm desperately wanting to get to the third book in the series and finish out this trilogy. And then next up is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, another book in a snowy setting. This is very much inspired by Russia and is also a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. What more could I want, guys? But in this one we follow Miriam, and she is the daughter and granddaughter of some moneylenders. However, her father is too kind-hearted to go and collect his debts, and so when Miriam's mother falls ill, she decides to take up this role for herself. Soon enough, rumours start circling that she can turn silver into gold, and this rumour attracts the King of Winter himself. He sets Miriam an impossible task, and if she fails she will surely die, but if she succeeds it could mean a fate worse than death. We also follow another girl in here called Irina, and her father is desperately trying to marry her off to the Tsar. However, the Tsar's not who he seems, and the secret that he hides threatens to consume the lands of mortal and winter alike. And so in this one, Miriam and Irina team up to try and defeat the evil that's in this land, and they embark on a quest that will take them to the limits of power, sacrifice and love. This is one that I've just finished actually. I finished it about 2 days ago and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. It is definitely a slower type of fantasy, but again, like I've said multiple times, as soon as you get about 100 pages into this book, I don't think the pacing is an issue because you are now familiar with the characters and the setting. This does also have multiple perspectives in it, which is really interesting because you can see what some characters know, what others don't, how other characters react to some things. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Definitely the perfect book for this time of year, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's looking for a book to read in the wintry season. And then my last two favourites are actually going to be authors more than anything else. The first one being Robin Hobb. I am just going to move out the way. You can probably see that I have a load of her books on my shelf. So last year I decided to join a read along for Robin Hobb's books, which is known as Elderling Along, and that is actually hosted by Becca from Becca and the Books here on YouTube. We did start off with the first 3 books in the Realm of the Elderling series, which are Assassin's Apprentice, Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest. And after those we did move on to the second trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings, which is the Live Ship Traders trilogy, and that consists of Ship of Magic, The Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny. I honestly couldn't choose a favourite out of her books, which is why I decided to show you all the ones I read last year because they all got 5 stars from me. Robin Hobb is definitely a new favourite author of mine and I cannot wait to read more of her works. I think Elderling Along is taking a bit of a break at the start of this year, I'm not quite sure, but after that I believe we are diving back into the world of Robin Hobb and continuing on with the rest of the books in the Realm of the Elderling series. I honestly don't know where to start with describing Robin Hobb's books to you. They are so expansive and they all sort of tie together. I personally went into Assassin's Apprentice not knowing anything and that worked out so well for me, but I will just give you the synopsis for that book because it is the first book in the Realm of the Elderlings and I feel like it's just the perfect place to start. And to be honest, I feel like this is another one where I'll just read you the back because I don't think I could sum it up very well. So it says, the kingdom of the 6 duchies is on the brink of civil war when the news breaks that the crown prince has fathered a bastard son and is shamed into abdication. The child's name is Fitz and he is despised. Raised in the castle stables, only the company of the king's fool, the ragged children of the lower city and his unusual affinity with animals provide Fitz with any comfort. To be useful to the crown, Fitz is trained as an assassin and to use the traditional magic of the Farseer family, but his tutor, allied to another political faction, is determined to discredit and even kill him. Fitz must survive, for he may be destined to save the kingdom. That is definitely a very brief synopsis. This series and Robin Hobb's books in general are full of political intrigue. The relationships we see between the characters is just so well done and we just see so much development throughout her books and that's all I can ask for, to be honest with you. It keeps me wanting to come back for more and I will definitely be carrying on with the rest of the books in the Realm of the Elderlings this year. Right, we have made it to the last books I'm going to talk about in this video. It is another mention of an author in general rather than any specific book, but that is JRR JRR Tolkien. And here we have The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers and The Return of the King, and these are the illustrated editions by Alan Lee. If you know me at all, you know that I am obsessed with Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit in general. It's my favourite ever franchise, and I honestly can't tell you guys how much it means to me. Saying that though, I'd never fully completed the Lord of the Rings books, and so this year I made it a mission to do so. I'm just gonna pop it down because it's so heavy, but I did read The Hobbit quite early on in the year, and I do tend to reread that yearly, so I'm very familiar with the story by now and I love diving back into that world. But like I said, I'd never actually read The Lord of the Rings in its entirety. So I'd read The Fellowship of the Ring about 3 or 4 years ago now, and I started The Two Towers but only got a couple of chapters in before I put it down for some reason, and then I just never picked it back up, which is such a shame. But I decided to buy this lovely box set as a birthday present to myself. I did turn 21 last year, and so I decided to treat myself a little bit, and that was actually perfect timing because I stumbled across a read-along for these books called Fellowship of the Read-Along, hosted by Lucy and Kiara. I will leave their links down below for you guys if you want to check them out. They are actually hosting another read-along for the rest of Tolkien's books starting this month, I believe. So if you are interested in reading any books beyond these 4 core books, then I would highly recommend you check out their videos. But yeah, they had a schedule of about 6 weeks, I think, to read the whole Lord of the Rings book, and I decided to join in. I did listen to the audiobook and read along physically, and that was the best experience I could have had. It definitely made the books more accessible to me. It was easier to keep my focus with the audiobook playing in the background. I listened to the ones narrated by Rob Inglis, and he is absolutely brilliant. He sings all the songs, does all the character voices, and also reads all the poems, which is just absolutely beautiful. So I would highly recommend listening to the audiobooks if you do want a more accessible way of diving into these. I feel like every time I reread this now, I am going to listen to the audiobook and read along physically because, like I said, it was just the most magical experience I could have had, and it's just solidified my love for Tolkien and his work. So I cannot wait to participate in the next read along that they're doing. I am going to be joining in February when they read the Silmarillion, and I'm just going to go from there. But I'm just so glad that I finally got round to finishing off the Lord of the Rings, and I'm even more excited to carry on with the rest of Tolkien's works because I just cannot get enough content from Middle-earth. Right, we have made it to the end of my favourites list. Please leave a comment down below letting me know your favourites of the year. Also, if you read any of the books that I just mentioned in this video, please let me know your thoughts on them. I would love to discuss my thoughts further if you're interested, so yeah, please let me know down below. Other than that though, I am going to move on to the Welsh word of the day, and I decided it was only fitting to give you the Welsh word for favourites, and that is ffefryn. Ffefryn. If you do ever want to be featured in one of my videos, then please leave a word that you want me to translate into Welsh down below and just put Welsh word of the day next to it so I know that that is what you're referring to. If you like this video, don't forget to click the like button as well as the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. It truly does mean the world to me, and I will see you soon in my next video. Goodbye!